Hello everybody, welcome back. Here we are for week number 4 of Overwatch League season number 5, mid-season madness pick'ems. So unfortunately, no excuses. We missed the first 2 matches. It's gonna hurt us in the pick'ems. We're at 83 points. Last week we had a pretty decent week in the East. We had a bounce back after getting 7. We doubled that with 14. We only got 2 matches incorrect, so that was nice. We got 4 in the double, and we got a couple of 3-pointers as well. In the East, fared pretty well. Only got 2 wrong, which I wasn't super mad about. We required a massive C9 from Atlanta. Otherwise, that would have been correct. And then Florida taking down Boston in a map 5. So, again, thought we were pretty darn close, pretty spot on with a lot of these. So, we'll take it. But without further ado, we'll jump into week number 4. I don't even... so Philly beat Charge 3-1, and Dragons beat Hunters 3-1. Okay, that's about what I would have predicted. That's unfortunate. Probably not those score lines, but definitely those results. But in any case, we are going to run through the rest of the week and, hopefully make up for those 2 with a lot of correct predictions here. So, Los Angeles Valiant coming up against the Seoul Dynasty. Dynasty are 3-0ing everybody. I'm going to say that continues. Valiant have been a little bit disappointing. They got off to a pretty nice start. But they didn't even put up a fight last week against the Dragons, and I think it's more of the same against an insanely good Seoul Dynasty team. Interesting one here. We got the Hangzhou Spark, who have been struggling a little bit, lost in map 5 to Philly last week, taking on the Hunters, who, again, fell to Shanghai today, but, I would assume looked pretty decent to at least take a map off of Shanghai. They've been pretty solid this entire qualifier, after having a rough kickoff clash. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say the Hunters take it in 5. Back and forth. Spark just don't quite look as strong in this meta. A lot stronger in the kickoff clash, of course. So I think that these teams have been balanced out a lot more. The Hunters really, really need wins, if they want to make the mid-season madness, especially with Philly winning again. So they're in a bit of trouble there. They might actually be out of the running. I'm not sure. Have to look at the standings after the games that have been played today. But in terms of the overall season as well, they need wins, and I think that they get it done in a really close match. Speaking of really close matches, I don't think we get one here. I'm gonna say Shanghai in a sweep. Charge still look a little just off. Dragons, I feel like are fighting their footing. Getting a couple victories in a row. I think that is pretty much a blowout. And for the double points match, we got the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Philly Fusion. I'm gonna give Philly a map, and that's all I'm gonna give them. I still think that Seoul is the best team in the East. I think Dragons could potentially maybe press them. Philly have had their moments. Hunters have had their moments. Spark have had some moments here and there, but Seoul is still the team to beat. And while Philly looks really strong at times, they also have times where they just kind of lose a map or 2, and it doesn't really look good, and it feels like their communication just kind of breaks down a little bit, and they're just not quite the team that we hope that they would be. And against Dynasty, you can't really have any of that. You can't have any of those, blemishes or mental mistakes. Just, when you, misuse of ultimates for a map or 2, it just isn't going to work. So I think they play well on a few of them, take a map down, but in the end, Seoul is still the better team. And then we got the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Valiant. We are going to go with the Spark here, 3-1. Even though they've had some struggles, I still think that they're a solid team. Valiant feel like they've struggled to really lock in what they want to do in this meta. We see some double hit scan. We've seen a little bit of the echo, but it's a little weird. It feels like they're not quite committing to one thing or the other in terms of the DPS. I think in terms of tank as well, Marvel's been pretty solid, but I feel like the Doomfist is falling out of favor just a little bit in the meta right now, and the Spark are going to take it 3-1 just because they're a bit more well-rounded. With that, we are going to move into the West. So, starting off with Houston versus New York. So, New York had a really nice match. I guess you could say that Yaki just went absolutely nuts against Dallas. It still wasn't enough. New York did lose, but they did take the field to 5 maps, which, you have to bring... There has to be some positive that you take out of that. But in the end, they still weren't able to get it done. Houston just absolutely snagged victory from the jaws of defeat. Please go back and watch this match if you haven't, between them and the Reign. Reign were dominant map 1. Houston came back and really smacked them map 2. 3 and 4 back and forth. We ended up tied 2-2, and we went to Ilios, and of course we went to a round 3, because why wouldn't we? It goes 99-99. Atlanta's in full control of the point. They're cleaning up Houston, and this is why, folks. This is why you do not give up. They came all the way back. They just have stallers coming in. Atlanta's got all 5 alive. Houston gets a Lucio swap. The Lucio barely touches the point. The Lucio gets nanoed. The caster's like, oh, the Lucio gets nanoed, which is going to do nothing, which, I mean, to be fair, he really should have been right. It's not like it was a bad call. They're coming in, they're killing the staggers. They duplicate. Nero hits duplicate on his on the Doomfist as Echo, of course, and Hawk accidentally seismic slams off into the middle of the well. They were on well. And so he dies. It's still 4. Houston's just coming back, trickling, dying, using any ults that they have as they're coming back in absolutely zero shape to win the fight. But overtime's been going for so long. The point flips. The members of Atlanta, the 4 members that are alive, are just making their way kind of around the point, trying to finish off members. They don't realize that the point gets flipped. Nero gets his ultimate as Doomfist. He goes into the ult. He has the splashdown. As they realize, you can start to see as he, you can see it in his eyes, and he starts to yell point. He comes down, not in time. None of the other members of Atlanta touch in time. One of the craziest, most brutal C9s in the history of the game. Giving Houston the map 5 victory, which they had no business winning. So that was a crazy game. Please go back and watch that if you haven't. It was super fun to watch. But in any case, Houston looking really solid right now. I do think that they take down New York. Can Yaki duplicate that performance? It's going to be really hard, because that was one of the, we always think of, or at least I always think of, Effect. Back, if you guys remember, all the way back in the day, Season 1, having just some of the most dominant, mostly tracer games that you've ever seen in your life, just trying to hard carry Dallas and having these incredible pop-off performances in a loss. Yaki's performance is up there with Effect. You talk about Decay also on the fuel about a year later. There have been a lot of these players. Aspire had some of these last year with the Defiant. There have been Shockwave on Vancouver last couple of years. Yaki's up there in terms of, that was just an absolutely incredible singular performance that just wasn't quite enough, because as a team they were still just outmatched. So I do think that they'll take a map here. Hopefully they're going to start being more competitive. Again, this team on paper is so good, but they have not translated it yet, and because of that, Houston gets a job done. Next, we got Toronto Defiant taking on the San Francisco Shock. So the Shock have been just rolling everybody. Toronto had a good start against the Gladiators, pretty much dominating map number 1, and then they just kind of fell further and further back, losing 3-1 eventually. So I'm going to give them 1. No 3 in Overwatch, but San Francisco has looked incredibly dominant in this meta. I think I said this in the last video, but they look stronger in this meta than they did in the Kickoff Clash, and they went unbeaten in the Kickoff Clash in the regular season. So this is a really, really good team, and while Toronto has been improving, and I like that some of their adaptations that they've made, not just trying to rely on that Winston, I still think that Shock is easily the better team. Next, you got Paris versus Atlanta. So I'm going to go 3-0 in favor of Atlanta here. They've had some really strong performances. They're going to be very frustrated about the result of their last match, where they were very, very close with Houston. Atlanta seemed like they were slightly the better team, but again, very unfortunate C9. So I think they're going to take some of that out on Paris. They're going to play super clean. Paris, they've just kind of struggled. They don't have a dominant Tracer and Sojourn. We've seen Dove have a couple of really nice performances on Tracer, but Wub hasn't ever really excelled as Sojourn. And then they've been trying Dove more on the Sojourn lately, but Wub not really adept on that Tracer, so he's been more the Genji. And Genji's just so easy, except if you're Yaki. He's so easy to shut down for a lot of these teams in the league. So I don't think it's a great meta for Paris. They're not an elite team anyway, so I think Atlanta is just going to pretty much mop the floor with them. Next, Washington Justice, who have been on a big struggle train, bunch of losses in a row against Vancouver, who has a lot of losses in a row. They don't have a single win this season. I'm going to give them one map, but I think Justice takes the series. They're going to start to, kind of turn it around. Basically out of it for the mid-season madness. They've been hopped by the Spitfire, of course, and they were the 8 seed going in. So for them, it's really starting to build that confidence back up. And then hopefully, they're able to have a better showing next tournament cycle. But I do think that they're still better than Vancouver. Justice have had quite a difficult schedule so far, as have the Titans. So I don't think it's an absolute blowout, but Justice have been the better team all season. I think they still are in this meta, and they're going to get it done 3-1. Houston Outlaws back in action, taking on the Boston Uprising, who have been up, down. Had a really close showing against Florida, but they did end up losing. I'm going to go with Houston here. I'm gonna say it's a 5-mapper. Last week on the last day we had 3 map 5s, all 3 of the matches going down to the wire, which was awesome. Hopefully we have some more of those this time out. Boston have looked like a competent team for large stretches. They just haven't gotten it done, when it counts most at the end. The comps with It's All just haven't looked as clean as the ones with Punk, and they're just not consistent on enough maps, I feel like, to keep winning series. So they're going to give Houston a nice fight, between Valentine, and Victoria. A ton of talent there. Punk has been really solid. Crimzo, great player, has been for years. They have ability, but I just think that Houston's a bit better right now, and they're a little bit more clutch as well. So I got the Outlaws taking that one down. Next, you got Florida Mayhem going up against the Gladiators. Gladiators looking better and better. They've had these really rough map 1s sometimes. Just a little bit of a rough starter on some of the control. I still think that they kind of roll, though. You know what? We're going to say 3-0. Florida has looked pretty good, but for me, it's just not really that close between these two teams right now. Like I said, for me, it's kind of like waiting for a team to prove that they're in the same league as the Shock and the Gladiators, because they've looked pretty much leagues above everyone else this tournament cycle so far. We had London, who's been playing really well. I'd say probably the 3rd best team. You got Houston and Atlanta, by that 4-5 spot. Dallas probably right about 6. And those teams have all been good. They've all had their moments, but the consistent dominance that the Gladiators and Shock has shown has not been copied by those teams. So I'm going to take the Gladiators in a clean sweep there. Moving on, Dallas Fuel taking on London Spitfire. So I think this is going to be a great match. Some people have talked about, Spitfire's schedule hasn't been the greatest this cycle, but I mean, they've looked really good. This is a good team. I don't think you can look at them and say, like, they're a bad team. You can only play your schedule. It's not their fault they've played some of the weaker teams. And playing a mid to upper team in Dallas, I think that they're going to show it, that they're a really good team. The Ryan comp is nothing to scoff at. So I think they take it down 3-1. Dallas, like I said, they've never really looked too comfortable and too locked in this meta. You know, you almost lost to New York, who has 1 win on the season. There's not too much to say other than the Spitfire look extremely, extremely in tune and comfortable in this meta, and that's really, really important. A couple more looks that they can throw at you. And the Sparker, I think, is really at the heart of it. We talk about the Reinhardt, and obviously Hottie is nuts on the Reinhardt. I think you could safely say best Rein in the world right now. But Sparker being just absolutely cracked on Sojourn has been extremely important as well. And it really empowers Hottie in that front line in terms of what they can do. So a good series here. Probably the matchup of the week, but I got London taking it down. And for our double points match, we got New York Excelsior taking on the Boston Uprising. So this is one that I've hemmed and hawed at a little bit. Boston look good on, like I said, they look good on some maps. Other ones, they look pretty non-competitive. New York, they've had a couple of matches where you see some of those glimpses. They've had other matches where they look completely disjointed and just get swept under the rug. 1, 2, 3. I trust Boston a little bit more than I trust New York right now. Boston is a bit of a better team for me. New York has a little more pop-off potential, I think. A little bit more individual, just straight-up skill and mechanics. But this is Overwatch, and team coordination has pretty much always won out the day. You could make a case in, double sniper meta. It was more about just, the rest of the team play safe as you can and just let your Widow/Hanzo just absolutely go to town. But I do think that this is a meta that pretty clearly favors, the pop-off potential on Sojourn, but the team play around them to support them and enable them, to be the best that they can. So I think this one's super entertaining. Maybe not the cleanest game of Overwatch we've ever seen, but I think it's back and forth. But in the end, Boston are going to just edge out the Excelsior. So, save predictions. There we have it. That is what I think about week number 4 of the Overwatch League, season number 5. This is it. The teams will qualify after this week, and then we're going to go into the mid-season madness before, of course, the summer showdown. So hopefully you guys are excited. We were, I think, about 5,800 last time, so we're working our way up. Missing those 2 games, it hurts, man. It really hurts. I feel like we could have another 4 to 6 points, but it is what it is. Work has been, crazy. I've barely got any sleep. I don't know if you can tell by me looking like a raccoon, but it has been not a lot of sleep lately and a lot of work. So that being said, thank you guys as always so very much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I hope you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys